episode 30 of Survivor Strong, the podcast for survivors of childhood trauma. I'm your host, Yvonne Sandomir. Excited to have you here with us today. My apologies, we were a few minutes late. We were having a little bit of technical difficulties here, but we are here. Yay, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. So, our guest today is Rica Ramos-Keenum. Rica is a former journalist and author of Petals of Rain and Nobody's Daughter, a memoir of healing the mother wound. Hi, Rica. Welcome to Survivor.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you today.
Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday to you as well. I'm so glad that we were able to get this all worked out and figured out for us.
Yeah, me too. I have some company here, I have to admit, if you see there.
See.
So we might hear a little grumbling in the background. It's no worries.
That is all right. That's good to know. I'm just so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for being willing to come here and be open and talk about your experiences. It's so important. Your story details your journey through family dysfunction, something that a lot of us can relate to. And you mentioned other important topics for women, who have experienced trauma and sexual abuse. So, what type of family dysfunction did you experience as a child?
Well, I actually lived in a household where my mother was divorced and she remarried when I was around 5 or 6 years old. And initially, her husband, who was my stepdad, he was, just fun. He was great. He liked to play with kids, and so that led to other types of play that were inappropriate, and so that went on for years. And it was something that I initially, when I had experienced it, it was a time when you would see a lot of those after school specials, or teachers in elementary school would talk about inappropriate touching and just tell someone you trust. And, it kind of paints the picture that, just opening up is all you got to do. But when you're that age, it's hard to talk about things that make you feel ashamed and dirty, and things that may even make people that you love and live with feel ashamed of you, or even disappointed in you. You get that feeling, and
Right,
there's
right.
predators who prey on kids, and they know what to say. This is just our secret, and your mother would be disappointed or whatever. So I didn't tell anyone, and it ended up being a couple of friends who had spent the night. They had experienced it too, unfortunately, and they told their mothers. Their mothers called the school. So everything was out in the open. And after that had happened, I was just so relieved, thinking, okay, this is the end of it now. We can move on. He's going to be gone, and we're going to go on, like we should as a family. But that did not happen. And what I experienced was my mom kind of shut down. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't allow us to talk about it. And it just, it was something that we carried, and I had to live with my abuser my entire childhood. And I grew to think that, it was the right thing to do, to suppress that and to keep it a secret. But, later in life, I then realized the impact of doing so. So that's definitely what the book is about.
Right. Makes perfect sense. And obviously, I can relate to so much of that. If you've read anything about my story, that mother betrayal, which in turn causes these mother wounds that as adults we have to heal. And,
Right.
and I really want to get into mother wounds because this is something that I'm actually actively dealing with right now in my own life with my own mom. Things that have, come to light that I've, you know, um, the fact that she's not going to change,
Mm-hmm.
and there is nothing that I can do to change that. She's still repeating behaviors. She's still protecting perpetrators. She's still turning her back on um, her family members, her child family members who have been harmed by their own family members. So anyway, can you tell our listeners, what is the mother wound? And more specifically, how do people know if they have the mother wound or have been affected by this?
Well, I think that, even for me, it's been something that I'm still learning about. Like you said, if you have a mother who has not faced things and is still in that self-protective mode where, it's not admitting things, not giving you the validation that you need, you tend to be in a position where you seek that validation from other sources. You may continue to, as I had, create that. I need to hear it from her. I need to have some closure, and in order to do so, I need her to apologize, or we need to have this conversation. And I need to, have something from her. But as you said, you have to admit that that person may not ever change. And there is a betrayal that has happened. And it's hard to accept that because we all want to believe that our moms really love us and have our best interests in mind. And that is probably the case some of the time, or, in some ways. But in other ways, it's not. And I realized that very much, and what the mother wound actually was, when I started to look back at the behaviors that I've had, and the things that have kind of caused me to feel like I need control in certain ways. Like, for example, an eating disorder, trying to control my body because I couldn't control external factors. I couldn't control what was happening in my life as a child, as a teenager. So those types of behaviors are red flags for women who are growing up with the mother wound, and also just a sense of not getting what you want from your mother, even if she is motherly in other ways. I mean, she could be a PTA cookie baking mom, but if she's not emotionally present, then you're going to get wounded.
Mm, right. That makes a lot of sense, and those are very good uh, examples of what the mother wound looks like. And the research that I've done about it, to get more technical or psychological about it, I guess, is mother wounds are basically, trying to think the best way to put it, negative coping mechanisms that your mother has passed on to you due to their own childhood trauma, etc. So I'm assuming that your mom also experienced trauma and childhood trauma.
That's a good point, because every bit of research that I've also done in my own experience has kind of alluded to that, the trauma that gets passed on. But I can't pinpoint any sort of trauma that she would have experienced. Certainly
Oh.
nothing that she shared with anyone in the family. She did grow up in a very loving household, and nothing like that seemed to be present. And
Mm.
that's not to say, though, that some sort of trauma didn't happen outside of the home.
Sure, sure.
That's entirely possible. There's something that could have happened at a party when she was a teenager, or just maybe some internal feelings that she always had and carried with her, like feelings of, being inadequate, or whatever it
Right.
is. We don't
Yeah.
really know what goes on inside of a person. So,
Mhm.
who's to say?
Well, and it's so interesting too because that's the same for my own mother.
Really?
My
Wow.
own mother, um, if you ask her, she had a wonderful childhood, never experienced any trauma. She felt loved. But at the same time, as a child, she will describe herself as being the black sheep. All of
My
her
mom
other
too. right
Okay,
there.
see, here we're
Ding,
on
ding,
to
ding.
something. See, all of my mother's other siblings were, high school valedictorians, cheerleaders, going off to the military, going to college. And my mom is really the only one that didn't finish high school, that, left
You
home at
nailed it.
14. I'm telling you. But she left home, at 15 to get married, and she
Yeah,
was on her own. So they say that their childhood was perfect, and but
right.
but it wasn't. If they felt like they were the black sheep, they felt ousted. They felt shunned in some ways. They felt less adequate than
Correct.
their other
Yes.
siblings.
Yeah,
And
and
I
I
yeah,
can totally relate to that as well because my mom did. She got married at 16. She was pregnant. She was forced to get married because it
same
was
with
that
my
time,
mom.
you
Same with my mom. Yep.
know.
Exact same. Yep.
So
Yep.
those examples also remind me of the fact that, like, you can hear from everybody around you who's who's been supportive and loving, all these great things about yourself, but we tend to, if we have low self-esteem or are, feeling inadequate, just carry that and hold on to that despite what other people say. It's that internal voice is so much stronger than the external voices.
Yes, and if you think about your mother, was she a loving mother? Was she um, warm and gentle with you? She was not. Okay, so she was
She
cold.
wasn't awful. I don't mean to say that in any way. She wasn't
Sure.
physically abusive. She tried, as a young mother. I can say,
Yeah.
she did try. She was always doling out lunch money and making sure we had warm winter clothes and things like that. But she wasn't warm and fuzzy. And even to this day, she is not one to even shake your hand. She's not a touchy feely, let's talk about, what we feel inside type of mom. So
Okay, and now let me tell you something. My mom was the opposite. My
really.
mom, very affectionate, will hug your neck every time she sees you, tell you she loves you 1,000 times,
Wow.
but she didn't make sure that I had clothes. She didn't make sure that I had food. She didn't make sure that I had safety and protection and stability. Um, and that is kind of like where I am. The words not matching the actions, in the sense of
Correct.
the actions would be making sure that I have food, making sure, but all the I love yous, I do anything in the world for you, but really have done nothing. So
Right.
it's kind of like the opposite. So it's interesting
Mhm.
how similar our stories are with our mothers, and those subtle differences, but it still makes so much sense. you know,
Correct.
it
And that's
really,
the sorry. I
oh,
think
that's okay.
that's probably one of the reasons why some people like myself have such a hard time identifying that they actually are, carrying a mother wound, because they might not look at their mom as somebody who inflicted harm on them. In
Right,
your case,
right.
everybody's looking at your mom like she's fabulous because she's a hugger and she's seems sweet and loving. And in my case, my mom was always, she was a hard worker. She did, she kept the house immaculate and all of those things where you can look from the outside and go, wow, she was a good mom. Or you even, I don't know if you felt that way at times, like, oh, my mom's, she's okay, she's not bad.
Absolutely. You know what I said about my mom? It's not her fault that we're poor. She can't
Mm,
help that we're poor. But then as a child, I didn't question, well, why are we poor? My mom's not working. Why isn't my mom working? You know,
ah,
why is it that we're constantly struggling, but there's always money for cigarettes or marijuana
mm,
or things like that? It just, priorities were so messed up. But as a kid, like you say, you want your mom to be perfect. You want to believe that your mom is the best mom, that she loves you, and so you're willing to overlook certain things just to keep this relationship with your mom, because
Correct.
nobody wants to just like go away. So you're willing to overlook these things and make excuses and justify or suppress is more like it. Let's be honest, we're really
Correct.
suppressing how we
Yeah.
feel just to keep this relationship. But what we don't realize is that that is making the relationship worse. It is,
Right.
it doesn't help, you know.
Yes.
My mom has also recently set boundaries. I'm not talking about your book. I'm not talking about your past. I'm not talking about what happened with your niece, and I'm not talking about your brother. All things
Mm.
that are things that I need to address before I can move forward in a relationship with her. So that means if we can't talk about those things, then we can't move forward. But I'm just realizing this, that I have these mother wounds. And I've been in therapy 8 years. Okay.
Isn't
So
it funny how long it takes us to actually
I'm
understand
telling you,
what's going on?
yes. And so at what point did you realize, like, did you say, when did you realize, okay, the dynamics between me and my mom, okay, this isn't right. These are unhealthy and this isn't good. When did you come to realize that yourself?
Well, it was actually around the time I was getting remarried to my husband, and we were getting the guest list together for the wedding, and I it was so awkward and emotionally challenging for me because I was faced with, okay, now I have these wonderful in-laws that I really love and are very supportive and wonderful, and I'm marrying into this family, and my mom is still married to my stepfather and very much has this play that she performs about our great family, and it kills me
Mhm.
inside to hear all the charades. And I thought, I'm moving into this new chapter of my life. I cannot bring him along, and I cannot bring these secrets and deception along into this new phase of my life. And so it just created this whole, chaotic event that just became a spiraling out of control type of depression for me.
Mhm.
And through therapy, I really, really understood what was happening and what needed to happen as far as boundaries being set and having the ability to let go of the expectations that of things changing that were possibly not going to change ever, and just stop looking for some sort of validation and answers from her that were never going to come.
Mhm.
So that was the start, that wedding,
Mhm.
the sit down with the invitation list, and that was it. She ultimately decided she was not going to come without him, and she made me feel very guilty about not inviting him. I was being a terrible daughter.
Wow. Wow. Okay. As you were speaking, it was like you were telling my story. I'm not even joking. 8 years ago, it was a month before my wedding to my husband. I was planning for the wedding. I got a phone call from my mom. She was concerned that some people couldn't afford the hotel to come in to fly into Florida from Georgia or Alabama or wherever they were. And so she suggested that they pitch tents in my backyard. And I was like, no, that's not happening. And, you have to understand when I repeat things that my mom says, she's a Southern woman. So I immediately go to that Southern. And she said to me, well, I don't know why not. You've changed since you've met him. You've changed.
Oh, that was the same
That
here.
that
Hmm.
sent me over the edge. And from that moment, I fell to the floor and I regressed back to a 4-year-old child. And I was pulling my hair, telling my husband everything that had happened to me.
Wow.
And everything that had happened to me. And from that moment, for the next, I can't even tell you how long, it was a depression I've never experienced. Couldn't get out of bed, couldn't change my clothes, couldn't take care of my children. Thankfully, I have a wonderful husband who stepped up, and their dad is wonderful, and he stepped up when I needed him to. But and it's funny because a lot of people don't realize that this stuff happens around these big events, around these huge life
Mm-hmm.
events, weddings, deaths, births, changing jobs, moving even. All of those things can really throw your psyche into a tailspin if you've
Correct.
had childhood trauma. So I just had to share that similarity as well,
Mm-hmm.
because that it just spoke to my heart. I'm like, I totally get it. And this
I
is
think
why
sorry, go ahead.
no, and I was just going to say, this is why I do this podcast.
Mm,
Because I want people to know that they're not alone, that that their story is shared with so many other people, and that there really is a
yeah,
community out here that understands them and can help
right.
them. And I want us all to come together. So, anyways, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that the change you were talking about, how these triggers, these
Yes.
realizations that, oh my gosh, this is not normal. This is traumatic. I've been traumatized. It happens around a change. And I think that particularly for me, that it happened that way around this big life change. I'm getting married. I'm moving into this new chapter of my life. I
Yes.
think it really happened for me because all of my life I had been used to suppressing things and doing things a certain way, from early childhood where The Secret came out and everybody just went on like normal. And,
How old were you, by the way, when it came out? How old were you, by the
I
way?
was about 11.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
Thank
10
you.
or 11 ish.
Okay.
And so, you're groomed and raised. You can't do what is not done in your household at that age. You have to go along with what you're taught. And so, it becomes that normal for you. And when you're in this phase or transition in your life where everything's changing, then it's kind of like a lot easier to reevaluate what had been previously, because everything's changing. So
Right.
that was the situation for me.
Yes. And that it's so true. It's so true. And so what do you think when you look back at it now, what what coping mechanisms do you feel like your mom passed down to you? Those negative coping mechanisms. Did she, what do you think she passed on to you?
Well, I can definitely say now, I don't know if this is something that is genetic or if it's something that is um, due to probably both
Mhm.
the trauma, cleaning, habitual cleaning. And it's
Mm.
just I remember her literally ripping me out of bed at 5 a.m. on Sundays or Saturdays, so that she could wash my sheets, making me strip down, so that she could wash my pajamas. And she was kind of this like control freak with the house, and
Wow.
I tend to be that way too. And
Mm.
even now, I will scrub my floors 3, 4, 5 times a day because I can't get comfortable in my own home unless
Mm.
everything around me is pristine. And I think that it makes me feel like I have control of the environment, and that's just something that I learned.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, that was my dog Furby making an appearance. He, wanted to say hello to
Well,
everyone.
good morning.
Sorry about that.
No
Yeah,
problem.
no, that
So
makes sense.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's one of the things. It's not a terrible thing, but also I guess the deeper, the worse emotional impact I think is the fact that I am not one to talk about feelings. I'm not one to, be very expressive. Even with my relationship with my husband, I tend not to be very attached and emotional, and
Mm,
I don't kiss and hug and love like that. It just feels awkward for me.
right.
And I think that, that is a challenge for me, and I work on it, but it's still a challenge.
Yeah, well, like we said, I mean, it's a process, and I say this a gazillion times, healing is a marathon, not a sprint, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's going to take time. And what I'm hoping is that even though I asked you that question, it wasn't to bring it up to make you feel bad for having those things. It's
No,
just,
no.
I'm sure that there are, commonalities with other people. And I just hope that you will reach a point where you just accept yourself for who you are.
Well, thank you. I'm
And
getting there.
yes, and in time, that's going to happen. And you said that you're in therapy and you're healing, so what does that process look like for you? How are you healing through this? And you know, keeping in mind that this is not something that we do overnight, you know.
Correct, correct. Yes. I would say the one of the big parts for me was actually writing my book because
Mhm.
I was experiencing all of that pain and all of the raw emotion at the time of the writing. So it helped me to put things in perspective and in a natural order that I can understand. Because, like I said, I am not someone to talk about feelings, but my outlet is to write. So that was, something that I did for me, but also something that I felt like I was doing for other women, the way you do this podcast, because I just had this strong desire to validate other women who felt like they
Mhm.
had not been validated by their own mothers and by maybe even the people around them. Where we get older and childhood trauma. People think, oh, you're old now, or you're older now, and you're a grown woman and you have your own family. Just move on. Why are you carrying that baggage? Why are you crying about past wounds and things like that? But that's bullshit, if you don't
That's
mind me
no,
saying.
it's
Because
complete bullshit.
yeah,
Complete
because you
bullshit.
don't age out of pain. You
No.
don't go, okay, I'm 40 now, so I need to be a big girl and move
No.
on.
Your pain doesn't
No.
reveal itself a lot of times until you are the age that, or your children are at the age, that things happen to you. Sometimes things don't come out until you're 40, until you
Correct, yeah.
realize, holy shit, I could be a grandmother. I have two daughters, 21 and, 18. I mean, I hope to be a grandma someday. And it's like, wow, I have to make sure that I'm not the same grandma to their children as my mom is to them. So now I'm thinking at it from a grandmother's perspective on how I don't want to repeat those behaviors. And so, how do we break this cycle, so we don't pass these things down to our kids? How did you break your cycle?
It's funny you talked about the grandmother thing because I am a grandmother, and
Ah,
my I
congratulations.
have two sons, and having two girl granddaughters
Oh, yeah.
really put me in a position where I was the female kind of role model in addition to their mothers.
Mhm. Of
And
course.
so here I am with a daughter, and being a daughter, um, you know, obviously my granddaughters aren't my daughters, but
Of course.
in many ways they are, because they are the first girls that I've been, directly mothering.
Right.
And so it put me in that position to kind of look back and go, what mothering did I experience and what do I want my grandchildren to experience? So that helps me every day to break that cycle. But in one
Mhm.
way, it also made things worse for me to be, just discovering, okay, you're a grandmother and you have two granddaughters. And because then I just truly realized that I wanted to give them so much more and than I, ever had, emotionally, in every single way possible. And that just made me sort of resent my mom, for all the things that she didn't do, because even now
Mhm.
she's never met her great grandchildren and never even met
Mm.
some of my siblings' children. Never intended to or wanted to, because it put her in a position where she had to reject her husband being there
Wow. Wow.
because of the boundaries we set. So, it still makes me angry. And that's something that I'm working on healing, because I look at my granddaughters and think how everything they are to me, how special they are. And why can't she want to know them? How dare she not want to know them? That
Yes.
comes up in my heart, and I have to get over that.
I wouldn't say you have to get over that. I'd say that you have to process that anger, and
Yes,
then
yes.
it will heal. But I am in the exact same spot as you with that anger. I have never been angry at my mom until now. This
Wow.
anger, I have made excuse after excuse for the past 8 years that I've been in therapy. For my book launch, I flew her down for my book launch so she could be part of it, so I could say how special she is and how she's not the same woman that she was, before, and, flew her in for my daughter's 16th birthday and all of these
Mm.
things just to make sure that she was included. But what happened is my brother molested my niece when she was 9 years old, the night before my brother, my niece's dad, was to get married. And my mother's response was, well, if Cameron's not invited to the wedding, I'm not going to the wedding. And it was that
Oh.
moment that I knew that she hadn't changed. But it still took me until this year to really like rage out. Like I'm raging. And so don't suppress that anger. Sometimes people tend to suppress it because they don't like feeling angry. Of course, we don't like feeling angry, right? We all want to be
Mhm.
happy, and, just nobody wants to be angry. A lot of people are scared of it. They don't know what it looks like. Am I going to explode? That was my thing. I didn't know what my anger was going to look like. Was I going to
Mhm.
explode and, break shit, or what? What was I going to do?
Be on the
Um,
news.
yeah, exactly. But what I realized is that it just gave me confidence to speak my truth. And so I had a conversation with my mother very recently, within the past 3 weeks or so, where, like, when you're on the phone with somebody and you're so angry, you can no longer talk like this. It's like you got the phone out
Mhm.
here and you're like, ah, that was me with my mother. And I have never talked to my mother in that way, ever. But it was so freeing at the same time.
Mhm.
So don't be afraid of that anger. It's actually really important. It's a really important part of healing. I mean, because you think about it, when you're dealing with mother wounds, a lot of time it feels like you're dealing with the loss of
Mhm.
your mother. And so you need to go through all of the grieving process. And part of that
Right.
is the anger, and then you get to acceptance. I mean, I don't know, can't remember the actual steps and order that
Order
things
of it.
happen. But
Yeah.
eventually you get to acceptance, right? You have denial, and bartering. And, I remember thinking, as long as I pay for my mom to come to everything, then she's going to be a part of my life. It's like, I'll pay
Mm.
for it. I'll just pay for it. And it's like, no, that does not change who she is inside. She still is
Right.
the same person. So I feel like I may have gone on a little bit of a tangent there. I'm sorry.
No, no.
Clearly, this is very, very present in my mind. And
Right.
so what I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for daughters with mother wounds? What advice would you give to help them begin the healing process? What do you think is the first step?
Well, I immediately think about the thing that was most beneficial to me and kind of really just put me in on the healing path is the therapist that I had been talking to. She said to me, you have a right to your feelings. You have a right to feel what you feel, that anger, that hurt, that trauma, that really just facing that wound at my age, being an adult woman, and being able to cry and grieve for what, was not and still, isn't.
Mhm.
So I think that is so important. It just kind of like gives you the key to unlock everything that needs to come out in the open. So yeah, I would say, just don't feel that you can't feel. You have a right to your feelings, whatever they are, whatever, cultural, social norms say, love your mother, you only get one, and all of that. Especially we're approaching Mother's Day right now.
Right.
And so that's difficult because you see all the flowers and the cards, and and you feel like I should do this, and I need to do this, but there are boundaries you have to set, and you have to put
Mhm.
yourself first and understand that you have a right to whatever you're feeling. So
Absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback on that thought about it being Mother's Day, you do
mhm.
not have to celebrate. No one has to celebrate a mother that was abusive to them. No one has to celebrate a mother who, wasn't there for them. Um, sure, we want to, but you don't have to do anything. Once you put those
Yes.
boundaries in place, you have the right to say, I'm not doing that anymore.
Mhm.
So I
That's
love that
excellent
you brought that
advice.
up. Absolutely. And so let's talk about your book a little bit. Nobody's Daughter. So tell us a little bit about it. When will it be published? Is it already published? Where can people find it? Give us a little bit more information.
Well, it just came out into the world on May 9th. So we are just a few
Ah,
days into, the release. So that's been fun. And it seems like it's been forever since I actually wrote it, when it's in fact only been about a year and a half. But it's been
mhm,
waiting in the publishing queue, for the seasons to pass, and for, the catalog that it was set to be in, to come to,
mhm.
the dates align and all of that. And I think that in many ways the wait was well worth it. I couldn't have asked for a better time approaching Mother's Day, because like what you said just now about, people feeling like they have to celebrate, and you don't have to celebrate, and you can, start those conversations with yourself, or even with your own mother, or the women in your life. Start those conversations, and what better way to do that than really just talking to other women like we are now,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
reading their stories. So yeah, Nobody's Daughter is available, everywhere books are sold. So Amazon, whatever your book buying method.
That's amazing. And what can people find when they read it? Do you offer some tips on how to heal from the mother wound, or is this your story about healing from the mother wound? How would you describe it to the listeners?
Well, it is a memoir, so it's not necessarily self-help, 5 steps to
Sure.
healing from the mother wound. So it's
Right.
my version of the healing process that is, ongoing. But I think that it's a fun read in many aspects, because there is real life humor. We've had some crazy things happen on the honeymoon, and I won't give any spoilers, but
Right.
it's just been super fun. And so, it's not a downer. It's not one of those books that you read and go, oh, I'm in such a horrible emotional place now because this has been so
Right.
dark. But so
Right.
yeah, it's fun. It's a memoir.
Okay, awesome. And so, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the listeners? Anything that you want to, do you have a website that you want to share or anything of that nature?
Sure. So my website is ricawrites.com, and it's Rica, writes, like writes a book. And yeah, I invite anybody to come and check it out, and send me a message, or just reach out to me. Maybe you have a book of your own. I know you do, and I would love to feature your book on the site as well.
Thank
Just
you.
gathering resources and good reads for other women, and for authors to be able to show, what they've written, even stories I think that have nothing to do with healing, fiction that can kind of take us away and give us a an emotional vacation, and help us, just to give that self-care that we need. So, any type of books I like to feature, and any stories I love to hear. So reach out.
Awesome. Do you have an email or anything, or just the website right now?
Well, the website, yes, most definitely has a contact form on it, but just
Awesome.
directly emailing would be rica@ricawrites.com. So
Okay.
that's easy.
Got it. Yes, that's easy to remember. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you being here with me today, Rika. It's amazing how similar our stories are. Really
Yes.
glad that we connected on Facebook, and I hope that we're able to stay in touch and continue supporting each other and supporting other people who have experienced the same traumas. So thank you so much for being here. I really do
Thank
appreciate it.
you. And I do want to say one last thing. I know you mentioned that you're in Florida, and so am I. So
Ah,
we may have to just do some coffee dates, or swap books in person, or whatever. Maybe I can get
I
your
would love
autograph
it.
on your book.
I would love it, and as a matter of fact, I have an announcement at the end of the podcast, so maybe you'll be able to attend this event that I'm going to announce soon. So,
Yeah,
but I would
absolutely.
absolutely love to. So that's awesome.
Okay.
So
Well,
thank you,
great.
Rika.
Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome. Before I go, though, tonight, guys, I wanted to discuss this topic because I've come to realize that some of my own unhealthy coping mechanisms have been passed on to my girls. And I'm
Mm,
just now realizing this after 8 years. And I've been in intense therapy twice a week. But now that
wow.
I'm aware, it's up to me as the mom to do whatever I can to reverse this damage. And, if that's even possible. And so it's also, if you're a mom and you realize that you may have passed on some of your own coping mechanisms, it's so important that you recognize it. Um, you know, I have to make amends with my daughters, and I have to recognize the areas that I let them down. Just as,
Hmm.
we have to do that as parents. We have to be willing to acknowledge our mistakes, especially if we're children of trauma, right? Because, of
Hmm.
course, nobody's perfect. But, I just can't tell you how important it is for you to acknowledge those mistakes to your children. Let them know that you're aware of your mistakes, you're aware of the ways that you've hurt them, and let them know that you're willing to do whatever it takes to fix it. At the end of the day, we can repair these things if both parties, meaning the mom, is
Hmm.
willing to change.
And
We
I
have to
think that
change.
that's so important, not only for your own, for breaking that cycle, like you were saying, with your own children, but also for giving yourself, in a way, when you're mothering your children the way you wanted to be mothered, you're mothering yourself. You're giving yourself the satisfaction of having that done to, your own children. And so, in a way, you're really doing some self-care.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But the most important thing that I want people to understand and remember is words mean nothing without the action to back it up. So,
Hmm.
moms, if you tell your daughters that you're going to do something, do it. Don't just say it. If you tell your daughter, I'll get therapy, go to therapy. Really put
Hmm.
in the work, because otherwise it means nothing. And those
Agreed.
words aren't going to change anything. So if you're really, really want to repair things, that's what it's going to take. So, finally, this it's really exciting. I will be at the Barnes and Nobles in Plantation, Florida tomorrow from 1 to 3 for their
Oh.
local author event. I was selected as one of the local authors that they wanted to feature. So, Rika, if you're in the Plantation area, you can stop by Saturday, and I would love to meet you and sign your copy of the book. So if you haven't already purchased a copy, of course, it's a great opportunity to buy a copy, and I'll be there to sign it. You can, ask me any questions that you may want. And of course, just even if you already have a copy, that's okay too. I still want to see you. I still want you to come in. I still want you to, come say hi to me. I will be passing out bookmarks and Survivor Strong stickers too. So, if nothing else, just come for the free giveaways. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody likes a bookmark, right? And I just wanted to remind everybody my book, the Invisible Girl memoir, is available everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, obviously, etc. And Rica, just one final. Do you have a book handy so you can show what your book looks like?
I do.
Yes, let's do that. I can't
So
end
this
this
is
podcast.
actually this is the galley copy, which is the proof that I
Oh,
got. So it's got that little sticker that says,
that's okay. I love
but
that
there it is.
cover. That is an amazing cover. So everyone, Nobody's Daughter, Rica Ramos. Do you use your last name on your book or just
I
would you?
do. I There's a story behind that
Okay,
because my previous book, Petals of Rain, is published under Ramos-Keenum, which is my married name. So if you
okay.
go ahead and read Nobody's Daughter, you'll see why I chose to use my birth name.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So now that we know that, we know what her book looks like. With that, thank all of you again for joining me for episode 30 of Survivor Strong. Remember, if you'd like to be a guest, you can visit www.survivorstrongpodcast.com, fill out the Be a Guest section. I look forward to hearing from all of you. We will be back on Friday, May 26th, with another fabulous guest, so I'm really looking forward
Cool.
to it. It'd be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time right here live on Fireside, Facebook, and YouTube. So remember, everyone, you got this. We're
You
all
got it.
in this together, okay? We're all in this together. Until next
Thank you
time,
so much,
everyone.
Yvonne.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you
Bye.
being here. Bye. Hi,
Bye.
Sebastian, Whitney, Judy. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you, Whitney, for your comments. I really appreciate you. Whitney, if you would like to share your story at any point, feel free to reach